Are you a high performing real estate investor who's looking to further elevate your performance? If so, download our free guide, Raising the Bar, 5 Steps to Elevate Your Habits, by joining our insider network at elevatepod.com. This guide, created by yours truly, has the power to put your transformation on autopilot and exponentially change your trajectory. Go get your free copy now at elevatepod.com.
Welcome to Elevate, the masterclass where we dissect the elements of exceptional achievement and lifestyle design with a focus on personal growth and real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, welcome back. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here. And I am blessed and grateful to be sitting with my friend, Lisa Hylton, today. Wow, you're going to learn so much about what courageousness, what drive, and what being conservative all in one can mean for your real estate business. What also the journey of entrepreneurship can mean, and the story of her experience of leaping from a, perhaps in some ways, a certain career, a safe career, into an uncertain, perhaps feeling unsafe, but also giving herself so much possibilities for a huge, massive future. I want to encourage you to really listen closely, because not only can this story really enlighten you, but also encourage you and open you up to the possibilities of what's possible when you push beyond fear. We talk about fear a lot on this podcast, but I think that you're really going to align with this. And Lisa is such an awesome, awesome person. In this episode, you're going to learn so much. Elevate Podcast is all about mindset, mind expansion, and personal growth for high-performing real estate investors. Today is no different. I'm your host, Tyler Chesser, and I am a professional real estate investor and high-performance coach. It is my job to decode the stories, habits, and multifaceted expertise of world-class investors and other experts to help you elevate your performance and lifestyle. Are you ready to take it to another level? It is time. Let's raise the bar. Before we dive in, I want to encourage you to give us a 5-star review, give us a rating, so forth, and subscribe. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you name it, because we're all over the place and we're going to continue to bring massive value. Also, the fee for listening today, by the way, it's 100% free. All you have to do is pay it forward and share this episode with someone that you care about. Because that's what it's all about. You know, if we added value to you, we'd love if you could just share this with someone else. Send them a quick text message. Here's the link. You got to listen to this show. It's so valuable. Here's what I learned. Here's my takeaway. That's all I can encourage you to do, whether it's someone that you know, whether it's someone that you work with, whether it's someone in your family, maybe it's someone that you just met. Share this with a friend. If you've already shared Elevate with someone, go ahead and do that again, because that's the fee for listening today. Also, by the way, if you want to be an overachiever, all you have to do is just share this on social media with someone that you care about. Also engage with us on social media, because, we love it. And I'm here to connect with you. I'm here to continue to bring value to you. I am so grateful to have this opportunity. So I want to dive in. I want to introduce you to Lisa Hylton, who, when she discovered passive real estate investing, it opened a door of opportunities she didn't even know existed. She had been juggling the demands of a high-pressure career and investing in real estate on her own. She had no idea there was an easier way to invest, and that didn't require all of her time and sole responsibility. So then a colleague of hers introduced her to passive real estate investing. The light then went on, because what she realized was that there's an easier way. This experience also helped her realize that so many opportunities that we get in life come down to being in an environment that educates and inspires us. So that's why she's on a mission to empower people around the world to generate smart passive income through real estate investments, so that you can get started sooner, achieve financial freedom faster, and create the life you desire. And so I just really love, this conversation with Lisa, because she is really showing us what's possible, and she's opening our minds to new possibilities. And she's also, I think, really connecting and aligning with so many people who have thought about making big leaps or making a big transformation in their professional and their financial lives. And she's showing you the way, she's showing you how. And I think that's so inspiring. So I want to encourage you to really, really enjoy this awesome conversation with not only the real estate extraordinaire, but also the new entrepreneur, Lisa Hylton. Lisa Hylton, welcome to Elevate. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I really, really appreciate you being on the show today. What is new in your world? I mean, what are you up to these days?
Ah,
Where do we start,
all the
right?
things. Where do we start?
Actually, if you don't mind, I would love to lead into this conversation with how we met. So we met
Hmm.
in Colorado. We'd never met each other before. We had no idea who each other were. And we were riding a transport from the Denver airport to Keystone up in the mountains for a conference.
Yes.
And you and I think, were the only people on that transport that were going to the conference. Everybody else was going skiing or doing something fun. We were going to do the nerdy real estate thing for the weekend. But I thought that was really cool. And now we're having a podcast conversation together. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that is so powerful. And that's one of the reasons why it pays to go to conferences, because you
Yes.
never know who you meet. And those relationships are just amazing. You never know
Yeah,
the
that's exactly right.
coincidence.
I'm excited to dive into your story today and really get a sense of where you've been, where you're going,
Sure.
and what that journey really looks like. But as we dive into this conversation, if you were to describe yourself in the way that your closest friends or family members, would describe you, what would they say about Lisa Hylton?
I think that they would say that I think they would say that I'm driven and I am very courageous.
Ooh,
That's what I think they would say.
I like that.
And then I think the third thing that they would say is that I'm a little conservative.
Okay. So why
Yeah.
would they say that? I mean, what about you brings out those three qualities?
So the driven and the courageous, driven in the sense that I have been willing to take big risks in my life. Coming from a small island, going to the University of Georgia, that university had as many people as where I lived in Cayman. So like the population of just the school was like the population of the country that I lived in and I grew up in. And then moving from that to then moving to Boston, and then after that coming out here to LA, not knowing anyone and starting a new life out here. And, and then most recently, being willing to leave my six-figure job to pursue a business, a real estate investment business, building a business. So yeah, I would say that's a lot of the courageousness. And then the conservatism, that one, sometimes people might think that I could do more riskier things, if that's possible, but it is possible. And I just don't.
I understand. Well, I think the combination of those three factors are amazing. And I think
Yeah.
we're going to get the full essence of that today in our conversation. So give me a little bit more context in terms of your upbringing. Obviously, you just mentioned it. You grew up in the Cayman Islands. So tell me a little bit about what was that like, and maybe lead us into how you kind of were exposed to real estate at an early age as well.
Sure. So my mom and my both of my parents are Jamaican. They met in Cayman, and together my parents built 14 apartment units as when I was a child, pretty much. And my father built these apartments in an area of Cayman at the time that was still going through development. There was like a whole lot of people living in that area, so it definitely took a lot of vision and determination to make that kind of decision. I'll also say my father he did not know how to read or write, but he was a contractor. So he could build with his hands. And that's essentially what he used that skill to then be able to create the teams around him to then build the apartments that still stand today. So almost 36 years later. And I'm grateful that he did that, because in middle school, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And during that time, he could no longer work. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So they were, sort of working through the diagnosis. And because he had made those investments, that enabled myself and my two younger siblings to continue to go to school, and then ultimately go off to college. And they always, instilled in us the importance of getting a good education. So going to school was a non-negotiable. It was something that you absolutely had to do, and to come out to be able to take care of yourself, just really pushed into you. So that's pretty much how, in terms of my background, After college, I came home, started working in public accounting because I went to school for accounting. And shortly thereafter, coming home is when I bought my first place. And I feel like a lot of people who are in their 20s can, or when you were in your 20s, can relate that, that's a time when people are like, oh, yeah, you should buy a house. Like, everyone's like, oh, you should buy. Like, and that's like everywhere. And I said, yeah, why not? So I found a place that it just so happened I ran a place that I loved. And I said, oh my goodness, this place is gorgeous. Like, I really want to buy it. So I bought it. And after I bought it, I thought, oh, I think it should be rented, and then you rent it out and it broke even the first year. And after that, it lost money for a total of 6 years.
Wow.
And during that time when I bought the place, also another lesson is, people are like, oh, I'm not going to need property management. I'm just going to manage it myself, And when I bought it, I was living in Cayman. I was like, that was my mindset. That's how I thought. And then a year after that happened, after I purchased it, I ended up going to Boston to work. So now I was no longer in Cayman, and I would like to hire property management, but I couldn't afford it. So I was now an out-of-country landlord managing this property from Boston.
Wow.
And it was definitely challenging because my mom already had her hands full with her properties because they still self-manage them, and now adding mine to the list. So I held on to it for a total of like almost 5 to 6 years. And after I moved to LA is when I got a check a bill in the mail for over $1,000. The AC company came out to answer a service call that my tenant sent to them because the AC had broken down, and it cost over $1,000 to fix it. And I was like, wow, this property has got to go. It doesn't make any money and it's requiring money. Like, oh my goodness. So I put it on the market, sold it. And after I sold it, I remember telling all of my friends, no more real estate. I'm done. It's finished. No more. And a year later, I say the universe has a sense of humor because a year later, I ended up taking a job as a controller on private equity real estate funds. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. But I didn't connect the two. But a friend who was there, who was leaving, gave notice just as I started, said to me, she was like, Lisa, it's going to take you 6 months to figure out what you're doing, and then another 6 months to determine whether you like it or not. And she was right, because in that second 6 months, I realized, wow, yeah, I can do this work, but I'm not going to stay here forever. So I need to figure out what my next move is. And yeah, it sort of brings me up to where I am today in terms of like getting out there. From there, I started looking at duplexes here in LA, but everything was over $1 million and needed additional money after you buy it. And I was just like, okay, that's not going to work. And then turnkey properties, my earlier experience really made me very conservative when I was looking at the numbers. And then about a year or so after that is when I got introduced to syndications in 2019. Made my first investment and never looked back.
I love it. I love it. And there's so much value in listening to your story and understanding your story. One of which I think of is like when you get started, it's like we can either have a blessing or a curse of a home run or a massive challenge. And I can relate to you in the first deal. I had a lot of challenges. It was negative cash flow and all these different things. And, I don't know about you, but Robert Kiyosaki, he never talked about negative cash flow in Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so I know many of the listeners can relate, or maybe they have a fear of that experience. But I'm sure you have a ton of wisdom and value and experience, obviously, that you gained from the experience in itself. But I mean, what really came to mind in terms of, what you really gained from that experience, whether it was, obviously you learned how to evaluate deals, I'm sure better. You learned about the mindset of management, self-management or otherwise. But what else were some of the values that you brought from that experience?
Yeah, I think for me, some of the key things that I think this entire journey, or specifically like buying that first property, is one, as you said, the numbers. Getting way better at running the numbers and knowing like what to look for, what questions to ask. So much more these days than like at that point. Also, coming from a place of like understanding, hey, what are some of the other options that are available to you? Like constantly sort of looking at, is this really the best fit for what it is that I'm trying to do? So with that, also sort of being able to be open to other people's opinions, but at the end of the day, be able to then make a decision based on what is best for you, based on what your goals are, and making sure that that investment aligns with your goals and what you want. So for me, I think it was a very good foundation for the next chapters, because since then, I've invested in lots of syndications. I've invested in about 5 now. From that, like that has also given me a lot of experience in terms of like exposure to different operators, questions to ask, things to think about, and that kind of stuff as well.
I think it's so important to talk about the challenges, right? Because, real estate, it's full of obviously great things. There's so many benefits to investing in a great real estate deal, but we have to be aware of the challenges as well. But one thing that really stands out to me is just your resiliency. Obviously, in that moment, you're like, I'm never doing real estate again. This is terrible. But over time, you've proven to be resilient. And obviously, you then became exposed to much larger scale real estate funds and so forth from your experience in public accounting and as an auditor. And that gave you a hint to say, well, wait a minute, maybe there was some scale that I didn't experience in my first deal. And so now there's something here, right? And so tell me about that experience and sort of your mind opening in that circumstance in your life.
Yeah, so I remembered before I got introduced to real estate syndications, I remembered going to lunch with some of the folks that I was working at my last job. And I was saying, hey, I'd love to invest in like self-storage facilities. And like, and people were like, why would you want to do that? And I was just like, Americans love to store their stuff. Like, it's just like, we like to buy a lot of things. So like, of course. And like, yeah, it didn't land at all. And then about a year or so later, I met someone. I was at this personal development program and she was a real estate investor. I didn't know at the time, but after like about 6 months in, the program was finished. And one of the other ladies said, hey, let's exchange business cards. So we did. And I saw that she was a real estate investor. And I said, wow, like I'd love to learn more about like what you do, because I'm really interested in investing in real estate. And she was like, yeah, here's my business card, call me. And it took about 2 or 3 months for me to call her because I dropped her card in my bag and forgot about it. And then I was cleaning out my bag on a staycation here in LA and I saw the card and I was like, oh my goodness, I still haven't called her. And that's when I found out about investing in these larger properties. I always thought it was just like, oh, like this was not something that was possible. Like it was just, institutional investors and big hedge funds and money managers that could do, invest in these types of deals until until I met her and I was like, wow, like then I got introduced to a whole underworld of like, all these different deals and then I saw self-storage deals and I was like, wow, like it is possible.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
No, and I had a similar experience myself because I was brokering commercial real estate and I was selling, properties to investors all over the country and even internationally. And I started to recognize that, there were larger pools of capital that could acquire larger deals, which obviously at the end of the day, it's all about scale, right? And of course, scale and also shared risk and shared, upside and leveraging each other. The way that I describe syndication, and you may have a different analogy, but the way I describe it is it's almost like if you fly across the country, most likely you're not going to be chartering a private plane. Now, if you do, of course, kudos to you and let's go for it. But if not, you're pooling capital with other passengers to go across the country, right? You're paying 5, 6, 700, who knows what type of dollars we're paying in today's dollars, because prices are skyrocketing in every direction. However, you're still not paying, $100,000 like you would if you're private, chartering a private jet. And
Right.
so you think about that, there's so much shared benefit, right? You can go to an outcome. You were talking about outcomes earlier and understanding what is the purpose for my investing and what are my goals, because our goals can be different. Your goals may be different from mine, but the cool thing is we can find outcomes through a shared opportunity. So then you started to see syndication. You're like, all right, I want to participate. I want to leverage my capital. I want to leverage someone else's expertise so that I can get to where I want to go. So tell me about that first experience.
Yeah. So that first experience was a 600 unit apartment building in Atlanta. And,
huge.
I looked, that one's huge.
Yeah.
I looked at it and I said, I tried to look as much as one, I liked the market. So the market definitely attracted me. I like the asset class. So the last bit was really, looking at the sponsor to determine whether this sponsor was someone who I felt I could trust, because it's not like as though I knew them for a whole ton of time, right? So just doing research on them, sort of seeing and then looking at their portfolio. So being able to see that they did have a portfolio of different assets and that this was something that they were doing and brokering and, managing. So I said, okay, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to try and invest and see what ends up happening. Yeah. So that particular property, we bought it in the summer of 2019. It was a Class C asset. And as I said, it was in Atlanta. So that particular property did experience trouble in COVID. So the NOIs did go down because every quarter that they sent out the P&L, I could see the decline in the NOIs. They paused all operating distributions from the beginning of 2020. So they didn't do any further operating distributions and they were able to sell that property. So lesson there to me, I think it's super important to, number one, be working with a really good sponsor, because some people would continue to try and hold on to the property and try to do whatever to try and get it to perform. But this sponsor realized, hey, we're dealing with two things here. Number one, we're unable to execute the business plan as planned because of all the time lost with COVID. Secondly, the tenant base that they were working with just was not paying rent. So because they had so much bad debt, they were just okay, the combination of both of these things together is just a recipe that they weren't willing to deal with. So luckily the property sold at a 30% gain, enabling investors to get their money back as well as with friends. So for that, I'm very appreciative. I did invest in another one in the fall of 2019 as well. Also in Atlanta, that one, 2 properties, a total of 250 units. And that one is also sold. And the money has now come back as well. That one is a 25% gain for investors as well. So yeah. And so it's definitely, there's no guarantees in real estate. You're always taking risks. Every time you buy an asset, you take a risk because you don't know everything. It's impossible to know every single thing. It's a part of having a business and entrepreneurship is that you don't know everything. And as you run across problems and things, it's being able to come with it with a problem solving mind to be okay, how can I solve this problem and, get through it. So,
that's so important. And I think it's almost a mindset of resilience. We were talking about resilience earlier. It's when you take action, you can expect the unexpected to occur, especially in real estate. It's always a moving target, right? And of course, anytime you take a risk, there's a potential for upside, right? There's potential for reward. So are you willing to give yourself that potential by, moving forward? Of course, being conservative, as you talked about earlier, evaluating not only the deal, the market, what is potentially hidden in the future, like a COVID, like a pandemic, or other things. You can never really guess about what's around every corner. And if you do try to do that, you're probably going to be in an analysis paralysis position. So I just think it's valuable to illustrate that it's not always perfect, but if you can be malleable, you can be resilient, you can still make decisions that are appropriate. And of course, what you just described there were decisions that were appropriate for that particular asset. There's many other assets across the market or across the country that performed extremely well during that period of time. So it's important to note that it's not just a blanket, experience that everyone had, but that particular asset, so I think that's so valuable. And now as you continue to grow, right, you're continuing to not only connect with operators across the country, continue to educate yourself so that while you receive these experiences, right, these in some ways, negative experiences that turn to be positive, right? These give you additional education. But as you've continued to grow, tell me about your focus now. I mean, what's your investment focus, your deal structures, your deal flow, all that kind of stuff?
My focus at the moment right now is multifamily. However, my broader focus and vision in terms of for my business is to be able to create recession resistant funds for investors that enables investors to invest $50K, $100K into a vehicle that gives them exposure to maybe 3 to 4 different asset classes that are known to be recession resistant. So they perform well through all periods of the economy, all cycles of the economy. And one of those assets are self-storage, for instance, is one of them that is definitely known to perform extremely well throughout all the different cycles. And then, the different classes of multifamily as well, like being able to have exposure to, having a class B plus, a class B, a class C, because each are going to give a different return profile because you're taking different risks, which is fine. I think people should be just cognizant of that when they're looking at returns. It's not necessarily a bad deal. You're not taking as much risk as someone who might be investing in an investment that's returning, double digit numbers, higher double digit numbers.
So Hey guys, just a quick word from our sponsor and we'll be right back to the show. This episode of Elevate is brought to you by CF Capital, and you know how much I love real estate and how it can be a vehicle towards creating any outcome that you want in your life, which is really why we created CF Capital, a real estate investment firm that focuses on acquiring and operating multifamily assets that provide stable cash flow, capital appreciation, and a margin of safety for our investors, for our partners, and for the people that we serve. Our team leverages its expertise in acquisitions and management to provide investors like you with superior risk-adjusted returns while placing a premium on preserving capital. Our mission is to provide property investment and asset management solutions to help investors maximize their returns by investing in high-value multifamily communities. Our philosophy is that we can elevate communities together through this process. And I want to invite you to go check out cfcapllc.com because we have a free ebook that's called The Bottom Line, the 10 ways to increase cash flow in an apartment complex. And I want to tell you that this is a value-packed ebook. So I want to invite you to go check that out right now at cfcapllc.com. I think you're going to get a ton of value just from reading this, whether you apply it to your own business or whether you educate yourself further on what it would look like if you invested with CF Capital. So go check that out at cfcapllc.com. Again, that's cfcapllc.com. And enjoy the rest of the show. No, that's important, right? Because not every deal is the same. As you just described, the deal that you did in Atlanta, the 600 unit, it experienced some challenges at a part of the market cycle that other deals didn't. So you're inherently experiencing a different type of profile. And so you may have a deal that's very low risk that is very low return because generally higher risk, higher return. And of course, that's just a blanket statement. That's a general statement. It's not true across the board. But I love that. And I love the way that you think about real estate because it is ultimately, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And at the end of the day, it is about the inherent risk that you're assuming for that potential upside. But let's talk a little bit about your journey because I think it's really interesting. You've leaped forward, right? You've continued to make these leaps, right? You've leaped into real estate from from a small scale as you began your career out of college. Then you leaped into accounting. And now you leaped into being a controller for a real estate fund. And now you've leaped forward again as an entrepreneur. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, each part of the journey requires you to face a lot of uncertainty. And I would say that this current stage has been the largest amount of uncertainty that I have faced to date. Because there's the safety net, like, I would say that there isn't necessarily a safety net, but like you could always go and try and get a job, right?
Right. But you decided
So,
to leave your job, right? Earlier
correct.
this year.
Yes, in the middle of an ongoing pandemic,
Right.
but I believe in contrarian. I'm a little bit. I sort of subscribe to a bit of contrarian belief, meaning that like whenever you have people that are like when the overwhelming consensus is to be like, very scared, I think it's the time when you need to start thinking about making bold moves because chances are a lot of other people are not going to be making these kind of bold moves. And it provides opportunity for the people who are willing to be able to say, you know what, in the face of this uncertainty, I'm going to create something that is going to be able to provide opportunities for other people, be it investment opportunities, educational opportunities, or maybe other types of opportunities. Because the thing is, when I say other, people might be thinking, well, what do you mean? What I mean is like sometimes you have to walk through the door to see the next step. And you're not going to see the next step until you take the next step. And that right there is, to me, is very powerful in one of the reasons I had to make this decision. And like, it also comes with coaching. Like for me, being in an environment around other entrepreneurs and being around, really good coaching programs and stuff like that has helped me. Like I would not have gotten to where I'm at right now and continue to play outside of my comfort zone if I didn't surround myself with other people who push me to do that and to keep playing at those levels.
Yeah. And I just want to say that I totally agree with you in terms of taking the next step to see the next step. That is sometimes the case, right? Sometimes you have to burn the boats and you have to commit and move in one direction without having every answer, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as an investor. Like you're never going to have 100% clarity, but you have to believe in yourself. It's like going back to earlier, we were talking about courageousness, right? Being driven, courageous, and conservative. It's like you can almost balance these things, move in that direction. But you were talking about, before we actually got on the show and before we started recording, it's like doing things on a continual basis to support your mindset and push through limiting beliefs. Like it's almost like that's an encounter that I feel like you are going through. I go through continuously. Many of our listeners, most people in this world, we're face to face with our fears continuously, right? And that like it's really close. Maybe it's consciously close and maybe it's subconsciously close to many other people who feel like they have this safety net of a job. And maybe that's a whole nother discussion that we could go down that rabbit hole. But tell me about that and what that support of the mindset really looks like. And what are you doing to support your mindset on a continual basis?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, meditation, affirmations, sometimes I don't have all the words. So I YouTube, good affirmations that like 5, 10, 15 minutes that when I wake up in the morning, I can listen to, because in the morning is a lot of times when you're scared a lot. So like being able to get that stuff in so that way you can show up and keep going. Because the more you take action, the more I take action, I can't really speak about anyone else. The more I take action is the more I see the returns of my actions. And sometimes I'm like going through stuff and like I might be creating something or whatever. And it's like, you might get that moment of weakness where you're just like, maybe it's not going to work. And then, an email comes in from someone who wants to talk to you about investing or, something that comes up that just supports you to say, hey, this is working. You just need to keep going.
Yes.
So like, I think that's the powerful thing about this is that one other thing I would say for people who are thinking about like making a change in their life is that when you make that change, be prepared to be tested.
Oh, yes.
Be prepared that life is going to present you with tests, either job offers or, things to potentially sway you. And you really have to remember what your goal is, what your true North Star is to keep going. And I think that is like really important as well in this, equation.
That's a really, really good one. Just know that you're going to be tested, right? Whether it's, something to, speak to your weakness of, hey, I'm scared of the uncertainty. So let me take something that's more certain that maybe has less upside, that really doesn't serve where I want to go, but it also, it protects my lower self, so to speak, my scared voice, or like we all have this. It's trying to protect us, which is a beautiful thing. It's trying to keep us safe. It's trying to, keep us alive so that we can pass on our genes and so forth. But there's, tests in that direction, but there's also tests in the, wow, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. And this isn't really going the way I expected it to. So how are you answering that test? And I think that's really powerful. So when you decided to take this leap, I would imagine that you came down to understanding your values and really where you wanted to go. And you decided, and you knew that this path not only would not be easy, but it would take you to where you want to go. So was it understanding your values and really what your true north was so that you could make this leap, or what was that?
Yeah, definitely. That was very key into it. The first thing I looked at was like, could I financially make this kind of decision? Because I am an accountant, so we do take care of numbers. Like that's important. And I do live in LA, so like this is not a cheap city.
No doubt.
So, the first thing was looking at my numbers, and I could see that, okay, I was in a position, both savings and investing, that I could make this decision. However, mindset, that part was really, 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 really hard. And it crippled me for a little while. I made the decision, and after I made the decision, I still felt scared for many weeks, but I was still showing up and doing all the things, but like you're scared, until you get to a place where you're like, you know what? There's no reason to be scared. Like, we're just going to go for it, and we're just going to, we just got to go for it. We can't stay in this place of fear, because we've already made the decision. So, getting to a place of gratitude to being able to make this kind of decision, gratitude for being in a place in your life where this is possible, because for so many people, it isn't. It's not possible. And then sort of being able, one thing that I said to you before we started was that you can't connect the dot. You can't connect the dots going forward. You can always connect the dots looking back. And it's so true, is that, being able to take a look at your skill set and be honest with yourself and sort of say, hey, what can I, based on the gifts that I have in me, what can I then create a business from what I already have, as opposed to trying to create what I don't have, and look at all the things that I don't like. Oh, you don't have, like, you've never property managed a property, right? Like, like not getting into all of that, like knowing that you can leverage the skill sets of really good operators and really good people to help you to build the business. And knowing that every business requires you to leverage the skills of other people. Like, either you're building a business and leveraging the skills of other people, or you're working for someone who's leveraging your skills to build their business.
That's exactly right.
Because they, the people who are running the firm I was at, I'm pretty sure they don't know anything about accounting. They don't know anything about managing funds and like ensuring that the funds balance and all this stuff, and calling capital and, providing for the investors all of the reporting that they need in order to be compliant with the law. But they hire people who know how to do that stuff, and pay them. and they come and they work and they do that work for them. So that way they can run their business, which, they then might be good at finding deals or, finding businesses to buy because, they're private equity. So sometimes they're finding businesses to buy or they're finding real estate to buy.
Yes.
So for me, it's like I had to come to terms with that. And as I meet other entrepreneurs today, I always tell them even at the highest levels, they're always leveraging other people. So why do you feel that you need to do everything yourself?
That is so good. That is so good. And I always think about the quote or the philosophy that says you're either building someone else's dreams or you're building your dreams. Right. And of course, there are times where you can help someone else go to their dreams, and you should be having the abundance mindset of, hey, when I help someone else, when I add value to other people, that also adds value to my own life. And of course, it's not about receiving, but it's about giving and having that long-term mindset. I think that's so powerful. Mm-hmm. But also even just thinking back to some of the beliefs, right? The limiting beliefs that say, mm-hmm. hey, if I make this leap, then I might fail. Or if I quit my job, then I might lose all my money and I might default on my credit cards. I might go bankrupt and all these things. But how about this? Like the switch of, if I try, I might succeed and I might create massive abundance and I might live the life of my dreams. So what's holding you back? And you continue to face these limiting beliefs on a consistent basis as well, as I'm sure, mm-hmm. right? Like I do, right? So what else? I mean, what other sort of tactics or tricks or hacks do you use to really get underneath that and change the story? Is there anything that you would point to?
I still come down to having the right people around you.
Yeah.
I also have a weekly accountability meeting. So every Monday, I read this book called The 12-Week Year. And then it just so happened that the people who needed to be in it just showed up. And I just asked them, hey, would you like to be in this, 12-week year? And I just keep it really small. And, I just focus on 3 goals. And I have my tactics for those 3 goals. And I keep showing up for them and being able to come back to that group of just 3 to 4 people every week, every Monday helps me to keep showing up, because the journey for entrepreneurship can be very lonely. And that's where all these masterminds and, accountability meetings are so powerful in helping you to keep moving forward long after you've felt as though you've given everything.
Yes, I totally agree. And the thing that's awesome about this world is that you and I can connect. We can share our story with so many people. They can connect with that because it is very lonely, especially if you're pushing the limits of your future, right? If you're making a new path, or even if you're following a path that's tried and true, it's still unique for you. Your story is unique. So I think it's so powerful to not only engage and listen in these conversations, but also find your tribe and really strengthen that tribe, right? Because we get to choose. We get to choose not only what our beliefs are, but who gets to get into our mind. So there's so much good stuff there. And Lisa, I really love your podcast as well, because it's called the Level Up REI Podcast. And I was blessed to be a guest on your podcast. And one of the things that I know that you and I both really share in terms of our love for doing this is observing patterns. You observe patterns of what works, what doesn't work, or what causes failure, what causes success. So could you tell me, if you had to really think back to, you've done almost 90 interviews or so at this point, maybe almost 100.
Yeah.
What are some of the patterns that you've observed from your vantage point of investors leveling up?
Yeah, totally. Never giving up. Willing to keep going long after it's no longer comfortable. So not giving up. That in the same vein, though, also some people who are able to pivot, who are comfortable, understanding, being flexible on the way the plan unfolds, but certain on the bigger vision in terms of what they're trying to create. And knowing, coming from that place is so important. It's really hard, though, I'll tell you, because when you're in the middle of everything, it's hard to know always what the universe is telling you is the next step to do. And sometimes you're just man, do you really want me to do that? Like, I don't know if I want to do that. But, being able to keep taking action. I would say people who keep taking action, like unwilling to, like, they're just not willing to give up, and they just keep going. Many of the stories that have come across my show have those themes, just people who relentless, they're just not giving up.
Yeah, and if you spot it, you got it, right? So you can integrate that story and that attribute to your own life, right? To your own business, and you can be resilient. You can never give up yourself. And I know that that's what you're doing, but is there anything that you've noticed that the investors who the people who have created a ton of success and abundance in their life, and they're continuing to grow and scale their business, they're leveling up. Is there anything that you've noticed that they don't do in particular?
They don't try to do everything on their own. So the ones who have been able to grow into very successful and large empires, I believe, have adopted who, not how, and they play in their unique ability, and they surround themselves with people who are playing in theirs.
That is amazing. And you got to drop the mic on that, because you know what, I tell you what, the book Who Not How, it came out several months ago. I tell you what, it's been mentioned on so many podcasts, so many different episodes, and it's a clue, right? There's a clue, and there's a clue for you. There's a clue for me. There's a clue for everybody listening. It's, what are you doing that you shouldn't be doing? What is it that you're doing that you're playing small or you're being selfish on? And how are you holding yourself back? Because, I don't know about you, but we were not taught this in school. We were not taught that, it's about building a team, or it's about sharing, talents, or leveraging each other, right? Because there's just so much abundance in that. And there's so much more that's possible when you forget about the how. I mean, all the different steps, we're not going to know how. You mentioned it earlier. It's like you take the step and you'll find out the next step, but you can let someone else find out the next step as well, which is beautiful. Is there anything else that you would add to that?
That's the key things I would say. Like, when I see very successful entrepreneurs, I would say that's definitely the key. The who, not how, that principle. Like, if you get that in, and just know that, I think one other thing is, like, never giving up on your goals, because sometimes it takes a while for you to figure out how to, like, get everything sort of done and to find all the who's. Yes. But I have seen things that I've put as a goal. I was trying to execute them all, like, in this week or whatever week. And, like, it just didn't happen. But, like, you keep showing up, and it's like by the third week, fourth week, you're, like, literally doing it, and you're doing all of the things, and you found the people to help you to get the stuff done. So, like, set the goals big, dream a bigger dream, because it's possible. It's possible.
So good. And we don't worry about the how, right? We let bigger forces at play come together, and other people be a part of that vision as well, which is so amazing. Lisa, this has been so fun. I really, really appreciate you. I want to transition into our rapid fire section. We call it the Rare Air Questionnaire. It's all about being uncommon, right? It's all about thinking big. It's all about facing your fears. It's all about getting to the root of these limiting beliefs and blasting through that, continuing to take action, continuing to be resilient, continuing to ask big questions of yourself, such as who, not how. But I would love to ask you a few things. If you had to point to 2 or 3 of the most impactful books that you've read over the past few years, what would those be and why?
The Big Leap. That book helped me so much.
Me too. Such a big shout out. Amazing book.
That one helped me so much. That is the book I read in preparation to leaving my job. It helped me to see when I was in those dark places. And then the 12-week year has been instrumental in helping me, as I said just a minute ago about the goals, like setting those goals, and like, you might not make it this week, but next week you try again. And the week after, you keep trying until you do make it, and you will make it if you don't give up. So, like, you just got to keep going. So those 2 are, like, by far the best.
Yes. I love it. And I love when he talked about the upper limit problem in The Big Leap. And I highly recommend that book. I'll have to check out the 12-week year myself. But man, The Big Leap is a life changer. It's a total transformation experience. So I definitely want to highly encourage that. We'll put links in the show notes where you can find both of those books. But Lisa, aside from our discussion today, what's the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis?
Yeah, wow. I would say doing things outside of my comfort zone. So every day, I'm pretty much, these days especially, I'm always working on something that scares the crap out of me, but I'm still going forward and, like embracing the unknowns of life and being open to continuing to learn. Because for me, if I'm learning, like I know that I'm elevating, and being able to look back and be like, wow, like that stuff used to take me such a long time and then now it doesn't. And like that then frees me up to even create bigger things and create more things that I would not have been able to do before. So, yeah.
So true. And learning is growing, right? We're either learning or we're dying. And I just think there's so much value in that and continuing to push forward, right? This is almost the theme of our conversation. It's so beautiful. Tell me what's the biggest way that you elevate others around you, Lisa?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest way, couple things. One is I love business strategy. So I like being able to as I'm talking to someone, I can automatically get ideas of things that they could do, like in terms of business, like if they're running a business, like other things that they could do that could potentially help their client, or they could do to like find out more ways they could serve their client base. So that's one of the ways I would say I'm able to like elevate other people. And then, continuing to just coach, like indirect and unofficial coaching that happens. A lot of people will reach out for just like thoughts on different things, and being able to share that and sort of seeing that when they institute those kinds of things in their life, like my WHAM meeting, the people in my WHAM, like each of them confirmed like a day or so, or like the night before the meeting. So like the meeting was going to be on a Monday, and I told them like the Monday before, like, hey, I'm doing this, I'd love for you to be a part of it. And like literally the Sunday night before the meeting, they messaged me. They're like, I'm in. So it's like, like these kinds of things that would not have happened if you didn't sort of make that outreach, and how much they have been able to see so much growth in their lives. And by them showing up, it keeps me accountable for my own stuff.
Lisa, I just want to give you a huge shout out. I want to acknowledge you in such a high capacity, because your entrepreneurial spirit is amazing, and your ability just to continue to move forward, your ability to smile, to have fun, to learn, to grow, to continue to give that and share that with other people is such a beautiful thing. You are an amazing human being. You're an amazing investor. And I can't wait to see where our friendship continues to go. And wow, I just really, really appreciate you taking time today and having this conversation with me. But is there any parting thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with Elevate Nation today?
Wow, I think we said a lot. Let me see though. I think one thing that I would share is I would share two things with them. The first is, what you don't know can be your greatest asset if you let it, because it ensures that you'll do things differently. Is the first one. And the second thing that I'll share here as well is it takes courage to discover, develop, and donate your genius to the world.
Wow.
So you have to be courageous, and you just got to keep going.
Lisa Hylton, everybody, drop the mic. She's dropping the mic right now in front of our face. What an amazing conversation, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here. Elevate Nation, you can find Lisa at lisahylton.com. That's HYLTON.com. You can also find her on Instagram, LinkedIn. Where else can Elevate Nation find you, Lisa?
Those are one-stop shop, lisahylton.com. That's Hilton like the hotel, only thing with a Y. And I do have a free ebook. So given my funds experience and background, and given all the funds that is the flurry, I've created a quick ebook, which is passively investing in real estate funds, what passive investors need to know. So you can find that. It's lisahylton.com/funds. So FUNDS.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, thank you again for being on the show. Elevate Nation. Oh my goodness. Can you believe what just happened? Lisa, we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Wow. What a great episode with Lisa Hylton. Such a genuine person. And I don't know about you, but she's inspiring me. And you know what? Sometimes we are reminded that this journey is not just us, right? We're not alone on this journey. If you feel lonely, if you feel scared and fearful of challenges that you're facing, just know that you're not alone. And hopefully that this conversation encouraged you to continue to press forward, to continue to push beyond your fears and towards your dreams. So I just want to encourage you to re-listen to the show. I want to encourage you to identify what are your top 1, 2, or 3 takeaways. If you really want to be an overachiever, maybe you go all the way to 3. But if you have just a little bit of time, I'm sure you can take one takeaway that you can go ahead and apply to your life immediately. I want to encourage you to share this with a friend, share this with someone that you care about, someone that you appreciate, someone that maybe you just met, and pay it forward, because that's what it's all about. It's about paying it forward. It's about paying that fee. As we mentioned earlier, it's all about really giving this to someone else. And until next time, Elevate Nation, I want to encourage you to take massive action on what you learned today and have a phenomenal day. We will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit elevatepod.com.